Welcome back to the RCA channel, guys. We are here filming another fit video. There seems to be an endless demand for these. People are interested in what we do and how we do it. We've got a good one for you today, or at least I hope he's going to be a good one. Next to me is another enormous human, just like Max, that you might have seen in this previous video. How tall are you, Grant?
I think like 193.
193.
Yeah, 6'4" or so.
Making me look like a shrimp down here again. So Grant has very kindly let us film his fit today because he's got a bit of an interesting medical problem. Grant has a fairly significant fracture of his left femur. Now, when did this happen? It was last year.
End of November, yeah.
End of November. Yeah. We're filming this in mid-April, so This is not that long ago.
Yep.
Sideways into a barrier at about 50 k's an hour.
Yep.
The derailleur locked up, you told us, and it just speared you into the barrier. And he's got a really nasty comminuted fracture of his femur with multiple fragments, burst fragments. It looks like the femur has been twisted to me, like externally, and it's rotated it, fractured it in multiple planes, and there was some serious metalwork put into this hip of yours, mate.
Yep.
So let's hope it's not as bad as it looks on the pictures, because the pictures that you just showed me look pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it doesn't look pretty.
It does not look pretty. So he's got a couple of other little bits of medical history: left shoulder, clavicle fracture, and an AC joint injury. But this femur is going to be the big one. Now, you actually contacted me before you did your femur fracture. Yep. You've come all the way from Sydney, but he contacted me before the femur fracture because he's getting consistent right-sided saddle sores. Yep. So there was a symmetry issue there in the past. We're no doubt going to come across some symmetry issues now because of the nature of this orthopedic trauma that you've had. We'll see if we can nail this one down and see if we can tell you what's happening, mate.
Yep, sounds good.
Get it fixed. Let's get cracking. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so there's a bit of a pelvic tilt with the left one being higher. You've obviously lost all your glute mass on this side, which is to be expected, 5-6 months down the line from such a fracture. There's not much glute left, and your quad will assumedly be quite wasted as well. Oh, it doesn't look too bad, actually. A lot of edema still. Well, like fluid sitting in there, isn't there? Yeah. Tense your quads up and lock your knees back for me, man. Yeah, it's much more apparent. The mass isn't there. It's mostly just fluid sitting in there. All right, let's look at these feet. Cool. They're fairly symmetrical. Now lock your knees back straight again, mate, and with both hands, stretch up like this towards the ceiling as high as you can. The tilt gets even bigger. Okay, come back down again. Stand on your left leg for me and lift your right knee up and down towards your chest a few times, nice and high. I'll hold you. Good. Now, the left one, same trick. Good. So your sacroiliac joint is moving freely on the left, which is a really big deal. That's a good thing when you've had a fracture like that. How flexible are you, Grant? Show me how bad you are. Yeah, you're reasonable. That could be worse. Arch back into extension over my hand. Yeah, that could be worse. Go sideways. Good. Relatively symmetrical. Cool. So this hip has got dramatically different range of motion to the other one. The external rotation is like 15 degrees. Yep. The internal rotation is spectacular. It's really good. It's got like a solid, I don't want to push it because it's probably going to hurt you, but a solid like 45 degrees. This one, if you let it go floppy, the external rotation is more like 70 degrees. So this one's obviously missing a lot of external rotation. However, the internal rotation is like 5 degrees. My guess here is what's happened is that when they've realigned the femur, they haven't got the torsion angle perfectly correct. So this is another quirk of having a fracture of this nature, such a severe fracture, is that not only do you get standoff of the bone ends, but the surgeons, when they piece it together, have to get the planes of the two pieces of bone in plane with each other as best as they can. And that planarity dictates the torsion angle of the femur, what I call the torsion angle. The surgeons have probably got a different name for it. But essentially, if that bone is twisted on some level, your hip will have to accommodate by either rotating into a different angulation to keep your feet in the same plane, or by just moving with your feet out of plane with each other. So you're obviously compensating quite well. We're going to have a look at your gait in a minute. You didn't walk in limping or anything, which I was very impressed at. It feels like you are. But you're obviously compensating really, really well for this. What's likely happened, therefore, is that they've got the femur torsioned internally. So So it's your hip joints are actually more symmetrical than they look, but because the femur is on a different rotational angle, we're getting a bit of a skewed view of what the rotation actually is. Yeah, complicated one, man. You're obviously a bit reluctant to fully weight bear on it, and you sort of list over to that side a little bit and you limp a little bit because your glute's not very functional and all that sort of stuff yet. But it actually looks pretty good. You've still got a bit of obliquity in your pelvis with the right side sitting forward, which is probably the source of the saddle sores. It's quite a subtle one. So that's probably what's driving it. Now, the question is why? It's the Q factor for sure. You can see the giveaway is the rotational angles of your 2 feet. Yeah. You know how you walk like this? Yeah. You don't ride like that, which is a sign probably that you're compensating around your natural plane of motion that your femurs want to operate in, which will be like, let's say for like a 15-degree external rotated angle of your foot plant on the, when you're walking. We see you on the bike and the right one is like trying to sort of come in and the left one's like fighting it and you're skewing slightly like this. It's usually a sign that the solution here is to move your feet further apart and then rotate the cleats to allow your heels to drift in and mimic the natural foot plant that you've got when you're walking. This is one of those ones which is really, really difficult to see visually what's going on, but that's probably what it is. It's got all the hallmark signs, like the way that your right knee is flaring away from the top tube and your heel is drifting in. Your right leg is really, which is your dominant leg. When you're dropping your right hip, that's the one that your nervous system is trying to protect. That's probably what's going on. Are these standard for Veros? They are. Cool. So my suspicion is, after looking at you on the bike, Grant, that the rest of the general position is absolutely pretty much perfect. The seat height, the setback, the cleat position all looks good. Nothing looks unusual. There is an unusual, awkward compensation strategy going on. So we can see from looking at you from the front on that your right knee likes to sit away from the top tube of the bike further than the left, and your right hip is dropped forward like this. Now, typically what's going on here when this pattern is occurring is that the person there's a lot of potential reasons for it, but when, in the absence of any major leg length discrepancies or anything else going on, this is often a sign of a compensation issue occurring around the Q factor. So we know from your gait cycle that when you walk, you externally rotate your feet a fair bit, with about 15 degrees, maybe 20. They turn out, both of them, a fairly large amount. On the bike, you've got this interesting skew of your foot angles where the right heel is trying to come in a lot more than the left, and this is often a lot of it's a giveaway that the person is compensating around the Q factor. This is just something that I've noticed from looking at thousands of people compensating around Q factor problems for the last couple of decades, is that there's a certain type of movement pattern that often occurs. The person will start to subconsciously favour their dominant right leg whenever there's a challenge to their position in space on the bike. So if the seat's too high, it's too far back, any of these things. If the Q factor is too narrow, they will subconsciously choose to stabilise and protect their dominant right leg, almost always the right leg. And that looks most of the time like they tip their right hip forward. It opens the hip angle, keeps the plane of motion of the right knee happy over the centre line of the pedal. The right heel will drift in towards the bike and they will externally rotate the leg. And so you can kind of see with what's happening with the right leg, what your nervous system is trying to achieve. It's trying to protect that leg and keep that knee moving centrally over the middle of the pedal, and it's sacrificing the left leg to do so. Now, most people with this type of compensation issue on the bike, they'll end up with left-sided ITB, left-sided hip, whatever, but some of them end up with one-sided saddle sores. And the other unusual thing is most of them will end up with left-sided saddle sores, but yours are on the right. Typically, which is unusual but not unheard of. So what we're going to do is do an experiment. We're going to throw on a pair of Shimano plus 4mm spindle Ultegra pedals. I don't think you need a significant, like a massive Q factor change. We're going to throw these on. We're going to use a pair of pedal washers underneath each one to give you 6mm on each side. So we'll have 12mm of extra Q factor overall. We're then going to rotate your cleats internally on the shoe to allow your heels to both drift in a little bit. And we're going to mimic your natural foot plant that you've got when you're walking on the bike and see what happens. So this will be a good experiment. Hopefully this works out, otherwise I've just explained all of that for no particular reason. Another interesting quirk, as I just said to you before, Grant, is there appears to be no femoral leg length difference, which is just insane. I've just spent a whole bunch of time explaining to Grant that his femur is almost certainly longer than his other one, and it doesn't look like it is, which is unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen a femur that was that banged up, which wasn't a significantly different length to pre-surgery. So yeah, an amazing job by the surgeons who patched you up. So yeah, let's see if this all pans out, and we'll see what we find. Very different size feet. That right foot is a solid sort of 6 millimeters longer than the other one. Yeah, some nice colorations. Yeah, they look perfect, man. Stand up on them for me. There's nothing I would change about that, with the exception of the heel wedging. Oh, heaps better. Really good. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's really close. There's a couple of things we're looking for here. One of them is extra engagement of your left hamstring, and basically the left leg looking much more controlled across the bottom of the stroke, which indicates that your pelvis is square to the bike, and it looks way more even. It doesn't look like you've got two different seat heights now, which is really good. Your pelvis looks much more square from above too, like almost perfect, not quite perfect, but almost perfect. It's not an enormous, like, oh geez, it's not like raising the seat 3 centimeters or something, you know, it's not enormous. Looks much better from the front. Much better. Your knees are much more equidistant from the top tube. Now what we've got to figure out is, do we need to worry about the torsion angle of this left femur? My right, your left. Because theoretically, if that left femur is turned inwards, theoretically your knee is going to sit closer to the top tube when the acetabulum is moving symmetrically. So when the actual socket is moving straight up and down, exactly the same as the right one, your knee is actually going to sit closer to the midline of the bike because of the torsion in the femur. So we may not get perfectly equidistant knee tracking by virtue of the fracture. Yeah. So that could be seeking to achieve that, which is one of the things we always look for, is like perfectly equidistant knee tracking from the top tube. Trying to find that might be a bad idea for you. That might be A, impossible, and B, not the right thing to do. We may actually need to let your left knee sit closer like this and just, you know, let it be, let it operate in that plane of motion. So potentially just using a wider Q factor only on one side for the right one is an option. Although this looks pretty good as it is, it's just that your left knee is a little tighter to the frame than the right one. The other thing we're looking for is sighting down at the nose of the seat, the gap between your inner thighs and the nose of the seat. When you're dropping your right hip forward, the gap looks tighter on the right. It looks like you can't see daylight through there, and on the left it looks larger. And they look absolutely beautifully the same right now, which is a very good sign. Just going to let you adapt for a bit. Oh yeah, see, that looks even better than it did 2 minutes ago. So you're adapting into it. Yeah, so one of the things we're looking for is that your bum feels more even on the seat. Yeah. Is it noticeably different? Or is it sort of hard to tell without some time on the bike?
The pressure itself feels more...
You can feel your left sit bone a bit more than you used to be able to. A bit more engaged, yeah. That's a very good sign. It looks a lot better. Like, I don't get any impression now when I look at you from both sides that anything different is going on from either side, which is really, really good. And from above, that's pretty damn good. That's kind of as square as people ever get. Looks really neat. I'm surprised at how symmetrical you are despite all of the muscle waste. I should probably ask you, have you tried lots of different seats over the years? How, like 5, 10, 20 different styles?
Yeah, like 10, 15
Shit.
different styles.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
This one, is this the best of the lot that you've ever found?
At the moment.
So far. Have you ever tried things like SMPs and stuff? Or?
In a previous bike fit, but never really
Cool.
sparked joy.
Cool.
You know?
My suspicion is, and I didn't, it's like it's taken us an hour and a half to get to that point where I've even asked you about the saddle, because I already knew the answer that you would have tried multiple seats to get rid of this problem. This one has been generally the best of the lot, the Pro Logo.
I've had it on the longest, so
Yeah,
yes.
cool.
Yes.
Cool. We probably won't seek to change it. The only thing that we could maybe, we might want to trial is something with more padding, just to soften up the contact point where the irritation is occurring. If there is still a little bit of asymmetry because of the weakness that you've got in your leg, or if this solution that we're coming up with here only 90% resolves it, or 80%, maybe something that's just softer through the midsection with a thicker padding. Something like an SLR Boost gravel. Have you ever tried this one?
Tried the SLR Boost, but not like the gravel variation of it.
Okay. Yeah, so the gravel variant has got really thick, soft, squidgy padding on it.
Yep.
And it's got really flexible wings as well. So like they have a lot of movement in them. This, if you've got some little protuberance or harsh point on the bottom of your ischiums, and you generally like the shape of the SLR, the SLR Boost gravel is a really good option because it's just softer.
Okay.
So while you're here, because we've got plenty of time, we might try you on a couple of different ones just to tick all the boxes. The deeper we go into this, the more perfect I realise the rest of your position is. The seat height, the setback, it's bang on, which is why you're not having any other problems except for this one. So I'm pretty sure we've solved it already. Just looking at this left leg, the symmetry of your knee extension, you don't look like you've got two different seat heights when I look at you from the two sides anymore. Looks really good, and your pelvis is nice and square. So the Q factor is one of those ones that's really commonly missed. It's very hard to spot, and you only know when you test it and do what we just did. Bit of a problem with your pedals, because you've got Feveros. We need to come up with a different power sensing system for you. Okay, so we're talking about Q factor options for Grant here. Grant came in with a pair of Fevero Asioma power pedals using the Keo cleat system. These have got a standard 52, 53, 54 millimeter axle, something like that, so a standard Q factor. We need something that's got around 5-6 millimeters extra on both sides to allow your heels to drift in whilst moving your feet further apart. So we need to change these out for something else. Probably the best solution for you to retain power measuring capability is to go to the Duo Shi versions. Now the Duo Shi versions of these have a 10 millimeter longer spindle. Theoretically, if you put them on with no pedal washers at all, if you then push the cleat laterally towards the outside of the shoe as far as it can go, you should end up pretty much at exactly what we've got here with our test set of Shimano plus 4 millimeter pedals with 2 washers underneath each one. So we're looking for around 6 millimeters on each side. So theoretically, at least, a set of the Duo Shis with the cleat pushed laterally should get you out of trouble. Bit of an expensive changeover, unfortunately, mate. I apologise.
Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. It's an expensive sport, this one, mate. So the other option is to use these pedals and go to a crank-based meter. Yeah, that's another option if you wanted to go down that path. There are some fairly good off-the-shelf Chinese power meters that you can get now if you don't want to spend a mozza. And then there's lots of expensive options if you wanted to go down the 4III route and all those sorts of ones. But would you be most interested in going to the pedals again?
I do like the pedal system at the moment.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Probably the Duo Shis. We'll put these on Facebook Marketplace. Coming soon to all you people in Sydney, a cheap pair of Feveros. And we'll try and get some of the Duo Shis onto it, I think, mate. Do you have any psychological issues using Shimano cleats compared to look?
No, I always prefer the Shimano, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah.
This is everyone's winning here. Everyone's coming up Millhouse. So what we can infer from this is that your central nervous system is very, very, what's the word? Very, very reliant upon getting that feedback from particularly your dominant right foot, but getting that neurological feedback that mimics your gait, which is where your feet are externally rotated and they're driving across and the heel is being loaded into a valgus angle like this, and stabilizing your feet on that angle using the wedging and the arch support really helps with your symmetry as well. But then the second piece of the puzzle is they need to be like this and also wider apart. And the reason we've moved them further apart, which I haven't fully explained yet, is because as they rotate into external rotation, it sucks your heels in tighter to the frame. So it artificially narrows the Q factor that your knees and hips are operating on. So in essence, your knees are not any further away from the bike than they were when we started with this Q factor. But because of the rotational position of your feet, you know, your knees have stayed the same distance from the bike, but we've had to move your feet apart to achieve that. Yeah. So the Q factor, that's one of the reasons why it doesn't feel that different to you, is even though your feet are 12 millimeters further apart, because the cleats are rotated, not such a big deal. Yeah, just changes the rotational relationship of your tibia and your femur to each other. So we've tested Grant with 2 other saddles here, the Celitalia SLR Boost gravel version, which is a really heavily padded version of the SLR Boost. It's one of my favorite saddles for big, heavy set guys or anyone who's getting any sort of really focal saddle irritation, because it's got such heavy, thick, soft padding, and also it's got a lot of flex in the wings. So it's a really, really forgiving saddle. We've also trialed him with with an SMP VT20C, which, as you can see, has got a reasonably similar style of shape. Now, Grant's used a whole bunch of different saddles over the years trying to solve this saddle sore issue that he's got on the right-hand side, and all of them have had this type of shape. So I've tried him on 2 that he hasn't been on before, which have got a similar style of shape. He couldn't really distinguish much between them, so we've stuck with his Pro Logo, which is a Pro Logo Dimension 143. And this one in particular, I'm going to give this one to Grant as a backup. So if he's still got a bit of saddle irritation after this, in any sense, this is a really good saddle for diminishing that irritation in his case. Very, very similar shape to your Pro Logo, mate, but a lot more padding. But wind it up to like a threshold style intensity, something you could hold for like 20 minutes or so. So far, so good, mate. You're preserving your pelvic squareness really, really well. There's no sign of the hip drop or anything coming in. Now's a good time to show me what you can actually do before the hip starts to cause trouble. Like, how low can you come? So what we'd be looking for here, because we know that he's got this major trauma to his left femur, his upper part of his femur, we're looking to see when he tucks down into a lower aerotuck whether Grant's having trouble at the top of the stroke. Now that could look like his left knee flickering out or circumducting over the top of the stroke as it rises. And it could also look like him dropping his hip forward to clear his left hip. It could look like the hip tilting across to the right with every downstroke on his right leg, which is the upstroke on his left leg. It could be that it's hitching him over to the right or pushing him over to the right. So we're looking for all of those things. And so far, pretty good. Sit back upright for me again, Grant. Keep the pressure on. So I can see a difference between those two things. You do hitch over the top of the stroke the tiniest bit on the left. So your hip is obviously reaching terminal flexion where it can't really go much further because of the scar tissue that's in there, and it's getting close to it. But it's not very bad, and it doesn't look like it's causing immense problems. Tuck back down again one more time. Yeah, you can feel it a little bit at the front. Just a little bit, yeah. So he's getting a little bit of irritation at the front of the hip where the some of the scar tissue is from the big fracture, and it is just tipping you on as this left leg comes over the top of the stroke. It's just tipping you over to the right slightly, Grant. It's very minimal. Hopefully it'll keep getting better as your leg frees up. Sit back up one more time. There's absolutely no sign of asymmetry here. We might get another top-down shot of you under the load. We'll do it before and after. Okay, Grant, we've finished up here, mate. We've measured the position. We've taken all our records of it. We didn't actually have to touch anything on the bike, which is really good. The seat height, the setback, the reach, the drop, I was pretty happy with all of them. I have mentioned to you that it would be worth potentially down the line trying some longer cranks, some 180s, 185s, if you ever wanted to do some experimentation, but you don't need them. You don't require them for any reason. Your hip was surprisingly functional, despite what had happened to it. Yes, when you tuck down deeply, you do get a little bit of irritation at the top of the stroke, a bit of hitching over the top of the stroke. It's just running out of range, but we can expect that to keep getting better and better. It's only been 6 months since the fracture, so hopefully it'll keep getting better and better. The situation we've ended up with here is using a pair of Shimano plus 4mm Ultegra spindle pedals with 2 pedal washers underneath each one to give you 6mm of Q factor on each side. We've then run the cleats fully inboard on the shoes to widen your feet as far as possible, and we've rotated them fairly significantly. Not a crazy amount of rotation, but we're probably 10 degrees or so off the centre line. And this is basically allowing Grant's feet to sit in external rotation to mimic his natural gait cycle. So we've effectively kind of normalised the Q factor again to allow for this to happen. We've just had to move your feet further apart so that your knees are basically the same distance apart as they were before, but your rotational angle of your feet is quite different. And it looks really good. Even under heavy load, Grant is sitting beautifully square. He's sitting really neatly. He's not dropping his right hip forward. And with any luck, that's going to stop the saddle sores. So fingers crossed, mate. I've got my fingers crossed for you. Hopefully this is going to be a long-term solution. Send me an email in a couple of weeks and tell me how you're doing. And hopefully no more femur fractures and no more saddle sores, eh?
No to both.
You probably don't want to do that again in your lifespan. You've had enough fractures to last you for a while, mate. Thanks for coming all this way.
Yeah, perfect.
Good to meet you, mate.
You too.